Why, hello, and welcome to issue 746 of Geek in the City Radio. I'm one of your hosts, Aron Duran.
I'm one of your other hosts, Spinarita.
I am your other host, Cable Hashitani.
And I'm one of your other hosts,
Yeah.
Anastasia Elfman.
Yeah. Oh, I like the hands.
Yes.
That was good. Those weren't quite spirit fingers. What were those?
I was like Wayne's World, like
Oh.
because
Wow,
I'm not worthy.
We're all of an age where that's exactly what we do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it is.
Well, welcome back. It's been technically, I think it's been a little over a month because October's got that like October 1st was the technically whatever. And we're like, we're not doing that. So yeah, Anastasia, how have you been? It's your super busy season. I feel like everything I see with you on Instagram or Facebook or now TikTok, you can follow her on TikTok, is
Yes.
yeah, you on stage or on shows and flamethrowers.
Oh yeah, I do that too now.
Yeah, I feel like you need to talk about how you became the possession of a flamethrower.
Well, I got cast in a scary film, a scary movie, and my director Drew Marvick wrote a part for me and said, "Hey, do you want to like have a kick-ass flamethrower?" And I was like, "Hell yeah." With zero experience.
Just point the Bernie end away from you. That's it.
Yeah, that's like
That
Could it be?
no, well, there's some other stuff, but luckily I had like a stunt crew and safety, like fire master on set. So it was a really big like arm workout. They're surprisingly like very, very heavy, which I wasn't really prepared for because we filmed in Las Vegas and I am a vampire and I am not good in the heat. And I almost died just like sanding outside. And it was like
Yeah.
just when they got a heat wave and in Hollywood, because I'm in Hollywood under the Hollywood sign, we had at that point we had like a little gloomy spell. So it was like a total it was nuts for me. But we got it done.
That's
And
cool.
now
That means
I'm addicted.
you are means you are in the same like boat as Sigourney Weaver.
That
Same.
leads me to my very
Go
important
ahead.
question. Please tell me at least once, and that somebody filmed you saying, "Get away from her, you bitch."
I don't remember. It's all a blur, but see, but here's the thing. Now I just want more people to write these parts for me and make sure that I just have a flamethrower in every single movie from here on out. So
Or we just
I'll do it
put you-
justice.
or we'll put you in more movies where we just give you a different, completely over the top gun, some kind of thing.
I mean, yeah, I like the flamethrower, not gonna lie. And I think
I was picturing we build her Anastasia your own franchise, your own horror franchise, and like Michael Myers has what, a machete?
Usually a
like a
chef's
kitchen
knife.
knife.
Kitchen
Yeah.
knife. Okay.
Jason.
Machete is Jason.
Jason.
Yeah.
Ghostface also has a kitchen knife. Anyway, usually horror bad guys have their signature weapon, and in your horror franchise, your signature weapon will be your flamethrower.
Yes, I mean, not to get too off topic, but shockingly, I was not the bad guy. I was like the hero in this film, very against type. Not to give away too much.
I mean, we could create a franchise where you're the. I mean, you think about it, like Bruce Campbell, Ash Williams, he's the hero, and he's given completely outlandish weapons to where like he can't even walk by even like a pair of like electric garden shears without someone looking at him being like, "Give me some sugar, baby." So, but that can be with a flamethrower.
I did say bad guys, but I'm happy with either one. We can
No,
go.
my typecasting is bad demon, bad person, bad woman. Like I'm always playing the baddie, so the heavy.
What if?
So it
Okay,
was perfect.
all right, we'll just break this story down right here. Fuck it. It's okay. Okay, so you're still a demon, all right? But here's the thing. You were wronged in hell because even hell has its weird laws. And you did everything and you were betrayed by like something from the abyss and it got you banished from hell. And now you basically want to earn your way back in by delivering as many souls to the devil as possible. So your flamethrower, the one thing you're able to do is your flamethrower actually opens a transdimensional portal into hell. So you're blowing literal hellfire. And you're just like, as you don't have to be good or bad, but if you've done wrong, you're gonna face. We'll have to come up with a name, but it'll be pretty sweet.
I like it. Let's get this funded.
Yeah, and then you'll have like a true form, like when you're really pushed and angry, like wings burst out of you, like dripping like black goo from everywhere. And you're like, I don't even need the floor for this. You rip people apart.
Don't threaten me with a fun time.
All right, let's kickstart it. Let's do it. I don't know. That's all I got. I'm like an Ed Wood. Is there a script? Fuck no. There's a poster.
Lovely.
This is gonna sit in my head for a few days now until I like purge it as at least an outline.
We know.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah.
we've met you.
Yeah.
We are familiar with your work.
Let's talk about a movie that has been made.
It has been made. So, as continuing our really focus on the spooky season, this month we watched Tod Browning's 1932 pre-Hays Code film Freaks. Ooh.
Oh, that right there.
That's a good one. Where'd you find that one?
This one, I got it online.
Oh, man.
It's a really good one. It's like kind of the Tod Browning, I guess, collectors. It has his Unknown, the Mystic, which they thought was lost, but it was just categorized wrong in a vault, and then they found it. So that's fun. And then, of course, Freaks, which we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it comes with a really wonderful pamphlet. Sorry, but it's like stock full of really interesting info.
Oh, that's cool.
I like that it looks like a little composition notebook.
Dude, I thought it was a book.
Yeah.
I always love a composition notebook.
Like a lot of great stuff. But I love physical media. You guys know.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Come on.
Of course.
We're aware.
Yeah. I hope it shows.
There have been clues.
Subtle nuances.
Yeah.
Subtle-ish.
So it was filmed in LA in, I believe, the latter half of 1931. This is back then when they cranked out movies fast. And I mean, it's there's like a mystery kind of involved because it opens with she used to be the most beautiful, and they show her now. Well, they don't see her in the beginning, and like there's the classic. I always call it the universal horror scream at the one woman that has the freak out scream. Even though I don't think we even see the woman who screams, I think we just hear it.
No,
we see it.
Bro,
you
watch her scream and turn away.
Oh, I missed it completely. Yep. I may have also blinked. I don't know.
I actually couldn't remember until you described it. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I saw that.
No, fair. It's a little. It's just it's not a crucial.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And then it's essentially a retelling of how she became boxing Helena.
What?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah,
it's a different movie altogether.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a reference. Sorry.
So that's So there's the preamble of some unfortunate woman, but that we don't get to see.
Right.
And then we cut to the story of how she came to be the way that we haven't seen yet.
Before we go further, I know both of you have seen this movie before.
Mm-hmm.
And
it had been a while, but yeah.
And Anastasia has seen this movie before. This was the first time I've watched this movie. I've heard about it for years. I've just never gotten
right. It's very, very famous, but didn't get a lot of eyeballs on it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, when it did, it wasn't huge. It wasn't like a singular movement that brought it into the popular culture. It just sort of gradually became better known.
Yeah, I feel like, and we can kind of delve into our thoughts on it really quick or whatever, but I feel like Freaks is one of those ones that found a place in like the counterculture underground movement, especially in the 60s. I think it was found. So that's where like they would start chanting like One of Us, like groups. and the three kids with. So I got to be careful talking about how they look without sounding like an ableist douchebag. The ones that had like the little not
Microencephalitis
is that what it's
is what
called?
it's called.
So that one of those characters became really big, and especially in the underground comic scene. And was there an actual sideshow performer who went by Zippy the Pinhead? Like, wasn't that their actual stage name? I don't want to.
So let's some ground rules right now. Otherwise, we're going to trip over ourselves talking about this.
Yeah.
They are little people. They are in sideshow vernacular. They are called pinheads.
That's it.
We have people missing limbs. Like there's the human torso. There's the legless man. These are not. We all understand these are horrible things to just call people. This is what they are called in the context of this movie and within the context of sideshow. So we're going to speak in sideshow terms. We certainly don't think of people this way.
Correct.
But for I just heard Claymore protesting outside.
Or agreeing.
Yeah. No, protesting that she can't come in.
Oh.
But that way we, like, the four of us can just have the discussion without tripping over ourselves. Does that make sense?
That's fair.
Does that work?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said no, and I'm out. I thought we're like, oh, we offended Denise. We're down.
Oh no, we're down one.
We're down one. It's already happened.
No,
so
like,
it's quite the
anyway,
opposite. We're gonna gain one.
Right. So I feel like this movie is referenced within pop culture and like nerd geek horror culture, but still hasn't been seen by everyone.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's close to how like the Bride of Frankenstein is this iconic image and she's in the movie for like 5 minutes. It's kind of like one of those vibes.
Like Beetlejuice being in there for a few minutes and you know, but leaves a lasting impression throughout the film. Yeah. But yeah, no, you guys are talking about a lot of really interesting points, and I also wanted to say thank you for letting us, you know, kind of like in a way dissect this. It's like kind of classically, historically misunderstood in a way. Obviously it's wrong to refer to anybody with like different abled you know, things going on as like quote unquote, like the movie calls them freak, you know, and these type of like carnivals were clearly exploiting people. But also knowing, I think it's crucial to know Tod Browning's history as well, because that puts a lot of like shines a bright light on what, you know, one would think that he wanted to you know, kind of expose and show, you know, because I mean, a little bit about his history is that he ran away at 16 and joined the circus, and he did a lot of sideshow things like contortion. He did his it was like the Buried Alive, where he was in a casket and you know, quote unquote buried for, you know, up to 48 hours at a time, you know. So he kind of was in that world, you know what I mean? So
that was going to be my question, because I saw, like, Aaron, you mentioned that in the show questions for tonight. That's not something that I knew about Tod Browning. So I was going to ask. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for offering that, because that also will give context to our conversation. That this is not a biographical movie by any, but it is certainly skews more towards his personal experience then.
Yeah.
And there's also a lot of controversy amongst, I don't know, people who, amateur film critics will say, about the way the movie is portrayed or is portrayed to have been received at the time, versus, you know, what people, particularly a modern audience, gleans from the movie now. So the idea that it was treated like the most disturbing horror film of all time, and that, people were screaming out of the theater. There was a woman who sued the production company. Was it MGM?
Yes, it was
Sued MGM
Mhm.
for causing a miscarriage because the movie was so horrible, like just like so horrifying. Um, but
What?
but
I
if
mean,
you
yeah, also it was banned in Great Britain for 30 years. I mean, it
Mhm.
was like actively w- copies and stuff were trying to like be destroyed, and
Mhm.
there was there was a big outlash with this film.
Okay.
but
Which is interesting because he considered these people like he grew up with them. They were his family. He doesn't. The impression you get is that Tod Browning never. The movie's called Freaks, but he. I guess we'll get to that later. But I think his interpretation of who the freaks are not them.
yeah, that you almost can't even call this a horror film, which I'm sure we'll get into that as well. But it's
Which is fascinating because, again, being this was my first watch, there was a moment in the film to me where I went, this just went from being a drama, a workplace drama, to, oh, now it's a horror movie.
I
Because,
can see that. Yeah.
and so I'm going to be interested in hearing where everyone else thinks about that.
Yeah. And the production was hampered from the start. I'm sorry, Warner. I bring up Warner Brothers because when Anastasia and I were trying to share this on Instagram, Instagram is like, you may be in copyright violation with Warner Brothers. I'm like, so they buried half of our stories on. I was like, whatever. Okay.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
MGM would not let any of the actors on the lot because they were worried it would so offend the other MGM employees and actors that they're like,
well, no, what happened is
oh, okay.
they were all of the people in the production of this movie were allowed on the lot and would eat at the commissary that anyone else
Mhm.
on the lot would go to. But then some people, allegedly F. Scott Fitzgerald being one of them, was there, saw the freaks in the commissary, and was so disturbed and upset that he complained about it, and that from there on out, anyone who was different amongst the cast was no longer allowed in the commissary building. They had to set up a tent over on their particular set so that they would have a place to, eat and rest when it was time for that, because they were not allowed with the normies in the regular cafeteria, commissary, whatever they're calling it.
that feels very much like then that scene where the matriarch and the three pinhead daughters and several other members are outside enjoying themselves, and the landowner has his buddy there, and that feels like that's commentary on what
Mhm.
happened in real life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like the land that scene, that landowner's buddy is like all but ready to just start beating these people.
Yes, for
Like
existing.
for existing. Yeah. Um so yeah, this movie had problems, and I don't think it had anything to do with it had studio interference since like they've shot the first frame. So much so that I think it had 32 minutes cut from it by an editor that was not approved by Tod Browning, like at all. He delivered a 90-minute cut, and they're like, fuck no. And they brought in somebody else to cut it down to 62 minutes.
Oof.
And that's just brutal. That's not like trimming a few minutes off because you want to come in under 100 minutes or something. That's an act. That's an entire act being cut from a film.
Yeah, the theory is that there are some really important elements that were cut that sort of make the movie a little bit more disjointed in terms of like the plots and getting to know the characters.
Oh yeah, there are times it's hard to follow, and it's because of those cuts, I think. Or character interactions that don't make sense from one scene to another, and I just assume it's because that was cut. The transition that brought those two scenes together, for sure. But yeah, we don't have to go into the basic plot of it.
I mean, the basic plot of the movie is there's an attempt to marry for money and then do away with the husband.
Yes, classic.
I mean, that's the plot.
Mhm.
That is the driving plot of the movie.
It just so happens.
It just so happens it's within, the confines of a traveling circus.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I guess at this point we can say like spoilers ahead, right?
Yeah, I
Yes,
think
we
it's
can.
fine for sure. Yeah,
We're going on 91 years, so
They've had time.
there's been time. Yes.
this is actually one of the first black and white movies I ever watched in my younger days, because I know we've talked about how I'm like, I've
Oh yeah.
really been interested in black and white movies.
Right.
But this was one I saw it probably when I was like 20, 21.
Okay. That's cool. I didn't realize this is what your one of your earliest black and white films.
Yeah. And it came about because I did the One of Us reference. But I did it because it's used in a Simpsons scene.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah.
And I don't know what it was about, the reason I'd been using it or whatever, but she's like, do you know what that's from? I'm like, this episode of The Simpsons? And we immediately needed to watch it. The weird thing is we were in Iraq and this is the early 2000s. I don't know.
How did they find a copy?
That's what I was about to say.
I mean,
that
did you
means-
just bring it with her?
Yeah, that's what that means. That means that person already had a copy.
Although, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing this is going to show my ignorance. Were you all able to use like LimeWire when you were in Iraq? I'm guessing there was a fuck ton of firewalls that prevented it. Because I bet you could VPN it back in the day.
I don't know, because I don't know what LimeWire is.
So, Cable, I'm dead now. And you're talking to a ghost.
I've never spent that much time on the internet.
Did you
Not-
never used to download songs, like pirate songs, and burn them onto CDs?
Oh, you mean like Napster?
Yes. LimeWire came right after Napster.
Okay.
It was a bit more stable.
Okay,
I'm still
no,
dead.
I guess I was done. Stealing music from the internet by then. I don't know.
Because you felt like it was immoral.
Because you sided with
wrong.
Lars Ulrich.
No, because I was in the military and I had nothing but disposable income.
Okay.
Well, that's fair. That's
So
fair.
then you saw, okay, but it's okay. You saw Freaks in Iraq.
Yep.
You saw the movie Freaks
Yeah.
while in Iraq.
Yes. Yes.
Just to be clear, I don't want anyone taking that out of context
Either one.
at all,
I don't care.
ever.
I remember the line getting used a lot in the Clerks animated series because the Pinhead characters make an appearance in Quick Stop to terrorize people, and they end with like one of us, and they drag people out.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's it.
'Cause I know I watched most, if not all, of that series, but I don't remember that. But I wouldn't have had the context yet.
That's fair.
I mostly remember who was driving. Bears driving. What?
Anastasia, what was your first time you caught Freaks? Like, was it as an adult, or were you like as like a teen, or?
I must have been, I don't know, like a teen. I'm guessing I saw it on maybe like on PBS or something. I don't recall, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. This question always gets me floored because I'm like, I don't know how I saw it. Like I wasn't keeping track back then. I was just exposed to it, you know? It's all a blur.
Yeah, I think I first saw it, and I have mentioned this glorious UHF station many times at KAME 21 at Reno, and they would do like Friday night frights. And this guy, I think, would just, I don't know if Freaks is in the public domain or if it's just one of those things that is incredibly cheap to syndicate and rebroadcast now.
It must be, since it's broadcasting on Tubi.
Okay.
Like, I think it's just one that gets to be cycled around.
Yeah, so that's where I saw it. You know, it was, you know, the controversial horror classic Freaks playing 8 o'clock on Friday night, and I was like glued to the set for that thing. So like so many of my early black and white horror films, I have that one dinky syndicated station out of Reno, Nevada to thank for it. Oh, UHF, you were glorious. Um, so yeah, it's interesting, and we can get to the questions whenever. I can just start throwing them out there. Otherwise, I'll just ramble on ideas and stuff.
That's probably a good idea. Let's just
Let's
go
do
into the
that.
questions.
All right.
Yeah.
So like, I'll just go down the list. One of them is one of the questions I had is that does Freaks challenge the conventional notions of normal beauty and body types? Especially within the context of now, not so much when the film came out.
I have a thought about that.
Do it.
It to me, it did not challenge those. It was very much like I sat and watched it going, well, I've interacted with people in the real world.
Right.
Like I worked a job where one of my coworkers had no arms. And everything that she did was by using her feet. We we worked in a telephone call center. Wow. So that was one of those things that struck me immediately. Like, none of this is shocking because in real life, I've met or know these people. I know people like this.
Right.
And instead of being horrified like people in the 1930s, it's just like, no, these are just people.
Sure.
So I feel like that helps the theme of the movie of like, no, they're not freaks, they're just people. The awful people are normal people.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're getting work in the only place that at that time America would let them get work.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of thing. And I when you mentioned that though about you working with a previous coworker, I started to wonder also, and I can't speak for Denise, obviously, whatever, but like I wonder if by nature that you and I we enjoy doing theatrical stuff, we enjoyed working haunts. I think that still attracts the person that might be considered a freak per this film.
Yeah.
So maybe like
I would agree with that to a degree, only because at Fright Town, we had a guy that worked there that was missing an arm, and so he happily, gleefully, every night sat through prosthetic makeup so that they could create a bloody stump.
Right.
And people would freak out even further because they would just go, "Oh, it's a one-armed guy, and look at it. Wait, he really does have just one arm."
Yeah.
Oh my God. And it would take them a moment to realize, no, I'm not looking at a special effect. I am looking at someone without an arm.
Isn't there also a guy who was born without legs that used to love to get fully made up and then terrify people at Fright Town? I feel like I've seen him before. Maybe it wasn't Fright Town.
I don't think so, but I do feel like there's a guy in Portland that doesn't have legs.
Right. And he does a lot of haunts. I feel like I've seen him a lot of haunts, and he has a blast.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean,
What was the question?
I mean, it's probably the weirdest of all of them. Like, does it just challenge any modern notions of like beauty and what is quote normal?
Oh, okay. I thought you were kind of moving in a different direction. No, I don't think that this movie seeks to. If there's any social commentary in Freaks, it's not about beauty or body types exactly. It's not about appearances, except for possibly the concept that like who you are on the inside matters more than who you are on the outside. You'll notice that none of the freaks are ever performing.
That's true.
All of the scenes that they're in are them just like doing normal life stuff, all behind the stage.
That is interesting because
off duty.
You'll see them go through the curtains to the big top, and you'll hear the crowd, and then but then it cuts back to their lives.
The only performances you see, unless you count Birdie dancing on the table at the wedding, The only performances you see are what's her name? Cleopatra
Mhm.
and the strongman. Hercules?
Hercules.
Yes, Hercules.
Okay. Everyone else is just off stage, doing off stage things.
That's an observation. That's an excellent observation that everything that we see is all backstage life.
And the people who are cruel and criminal and, betraying the trust of their peers, because if you, an environment like the circus is probably not just a workplace. That's, essentially your family, because you're traveling, you're together, you're apart from anyone who could potentially be your real friends and family. So these people in your workplace, traveling workplace, become your friends and family, which actually is very similar to the military, come to think of it. So the only people who are bad or cruel or evil are the normal slash beautiful people. They're also another thing that I was made aware of is that when the freaks do commit violence, it's pretty fucking justified by that point,
Yeah, a lot of it definitely is, I feel like.
because they're protecting their own,
Right.
and it's retribution for trying to kill one of their own.
Yeah.
So yes and no, I guess, is the answer to this question. Like, it does send a message that the beautiful people are bad, and that the quote unquote ugly people in our world are are capable of being just as good as anybody else.
Sure.
Yeah, to oversimplify, it's a don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
Anastasia, what are your thoughts on this same question?
What was the question? Beauty standards?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just as a challenge it for modern audiences, because I feel like it's not something that would have been thought about when this film came out.
Well, where you guys have like covered a lot of my own thoughts, so it's it's hard to reiterate that. I would say that it's, you know, I mean, it's kind of a grim fable, kind of appearing a looking behind the curtain, as you guys said, into like the quote unquote like daily life, a look into the family, their chosen family. Um, to me watching the film, I mean this doesn't cover beauty standards, but to me watching it, I always thought of it as kind of a love story. There's like at least three different love stories going on. Not all of them correct. I mean, there's like an evil one, a middle one, and then the one that for sorrow, that you want to see them get back together. And then what else? Beauty standards. I mean, it's really interesting because you guys talked about people with different abilities being able to take care of themselves and support themselves and their families, because they're not just to be laughed at or whatever. These are real humans, and they need a way to support themselves, and that a lot of times their only way of doing that was to be in a way like to perform, and unfortunately with the times back then it was to be gawked at, which is so sad. But a lot of them it feels like they turned the tables and took control of that narrative, in a way. And they the exploited people, they received money, status, even celebrity status. I mean, when I was reading about the film, it was like Tod Browning said that he had the best of the best. And each one of them didn't consider themselves anything different than who they were, like a person. And they felt like sorry for the next, like that at least, I didn't have that or whatever. So they thought very highly, which is great. And, but what else? I don't know. I feel like back then when the film came out, it was, you know, people were trying to hide them. And I don't think that's really fair. and right now it's like we have more understanding and compassion and being inclusive, you know. So I don't, if this movie came out today, I think it would have been more supported, you know, rather than shunned, because it was shining light. It was almost like holding a mirror up to society, like what you guys were saying, that like the evil ones are the quote unquote beautiful people, the normal, like, quote unquote. Oh, did I lose you? Nope, here we go.
No, we're there. Sorry.
I'm in Hollywood, so who knows when I'll like cut out.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because in kind of me doing some more research and just collecting my thoughts on this, I found myself finding a lot of like really in depth and very well thought out um, pieces and critiques and thoughts about this film, specifically from the differently abled perspective, as someone who is, I am this, I have been told to be offended by this film, but I'm not. I think it's actually handled with pretty, this one, the multiple ones I read, there was a similar vibe of, it was handled with way more respect and dignity than I thought it would, especially because it came out in 1932.
Yeah.
And of like, if that's your takeaway, that this is exploitive to make a buck, one of the reviews I read that was a really nice review was, maybe you should look more inward then and how you see these people.
So in preparing for this conversation, I scoped out a couple different reviews and things like that, and the sort of overall consensus for like modern times seems to be that maybe the reason this movie was said to be so horrifying and offensive when it first came out and for so many years after is because it is actually normalizing uh, a group of people in our society that up until then had always been othered and vilified.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was one review that like listed off all of these different movies, including Tod Browning's other movies that include, Lon Chaney with this, horrible phantom makeup, and how risque Dracula was, and it's just like horror was not brand baby new when this movie was made. It had already been on a several year high.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
this was post Dracula.
mm-hmm.
Right.
I think this was supposed to be one of Tod Browning's last films.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
again, like the horror genre is no longer new at this point, and much scarier things had been put on screen up until now, but they were well received, and not this one. Why? And the general thought is that it's because it's these gross, ugly people that we don't want to look at, and they should be shunned and, shoved off to the side where we don't have to look at them. And now you're putting them in a movie, and in this movie, they are being portrayed as good and normal people. And these are
Because
very
they are.
general words. I don't
Yeah, I know what you
mean
mean.
them in, I don't mean
Because
those
there was
things.
almost a perception of the general public then that the existence of these people goes against the, what should be
Right.
allowed. It goes,
Yeah, well, like
they're imperfect in God's eyes because look how he made them.
just like you had mentioned that early scene, the guy literally says they should be drowned at birth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's mad that they exist, not just that they're on his land.
I'm mad he exists.
Yeah.
Yes.
He was awful.
Yeah, I
for sure.
mean, to be fair, Tod Browning had kind of a history of covering the macabre and including these type of different abled storylines and giving like a platform to them, which I think is so inclusive. I mean, if you look at his The Unknown, he didn't direct Phantom of the Opera, just to put that out there, but he did do The Unknown with Lon Chaney Sr. And they used like a body double, I guess a lower half double for Lon Senior for I don't know if you guys have seen The Unknown, but he does a lot of these like stunt tricks, like throwing blades and knives at a very young, I believe it's like Joan Crawford. And
Oh, wow. Yeah.
yeah. And so they used somebody who actually did those, and like there were like moments of like lighting a cigarette and things like that. So I love how supportive Tod Browning is to give like these roles to people, and not just have like an actor, not have like a Scarlett Johansson take over. You know, it's like I want to see these people tell their own stories, you know, for personally. And
I'm sorry, I'm
also,
going to make the obvious joke that, well, it's if they had an Asian character somewhere in the movie, she would have been all over it.
She can play anything.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine.
sorry, was that offensive? I didn't mean
No,
to
no,
be, but
no,
I just want to see people tell their own stories personally.
It's the joke of Scarlett
Oh, there we
Johansson
go.
has played other, Asian characters.
No,
She played,
exactly. I mean,
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a twofold thing. It's like some people say that these kind of roles are degrading and things, but it's like trying to tell the story. And to me, I mean, I'm not in that world, so it's not really my place. But just as a supporter, um I would say that I want to have more understanding, and I walk away from Tod Browning's Freaks with so much compassion and empathy
Mhm.
for just I mean, also like as a mother, I just want to love, like I just want to take care of everybody, like it was like heart. I mean, I rewatched it with our daughter Audrey, and she had some very strong opinions and everything, which is great, and I'm glad that she's like thinking of these things and that she wanted to watch it with me.
Mhm.
um but I just think that kind of like an overall like trying to like that's like early, like I guess like a version of like blackballing cancel culture. I think it's important to support these artists,
Mhm.
and not just because it's difficult to watch. I mean, film art should move you, and you should have a reaction to it. And for me, it's like it's so obvious that um they're the heroes, and the quote unquote pretty people, they're so evil. I can't believe how evil that some of those scenes are. It's just like gut-wrenching to watch. I mean,
Right.
I teared up when I was watching. I had to like hold it together.
Oh.
It was
I,
so intense.
and
But
I do appreciate that. I'm sorry. Go
oh
ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I do appreciate that it's not wholly all normal people are evil, because it's specifically the ones that they're out for themselves. And
Right.
they're set up very early as these people are very selfish, and that's what makes them awful. Because the people who were not being selfish worked with them, worked with the freaks of the movie.
Right. Yeah.
Like Venus, and what was the clown's name?
Frozo.
Frozo.
Right. Well, it's interesting, Anastasia, what you said about the one of Tod Browning's statements being that the quote normal people are the true monsters, the true freaks, at least the ones as presented. Because yeah, what Cable said, they are selfish, they're greedy, they're mean.
Mm-hmm.
That's like and I know for the show, Cable mentioned he does not particularly enjoy the word trope because the way it's used in the modern vernacular
Right.
of it's just lazy writing now. And some say, well, that's a trope.
It's like, well, yes, but they all came from somewhere.
They all came from somewhere, and one of them is the real monsters are us. It's always been us, and I think that's very much like a trope now, and it's not a bad thing.
If it continues to be
Accurate,
yeah, a relatable message.
and yet he's saying that story. That's one of his messages in a time where, in terms of pop culture, that trope didn't exist yet.
Mm-mm.
Monsters were monsters. Like, it was cut and dry. Like, no matter how you want to interpret Dracula now through a modern edge lens. Although I think the first Dracula poster said the most bizarre love story of all time, not the most horrific tale. Like it was, I think, pitched as like a dark love story. But Dracula was still the villain. The Phantom is the villain, no matter how modern audiences can interpret it. This is only a few years after those films collectively, and he's saying like, just because you look different or sound different, you're not the villain. How you act towards them, that can make you the villain. And not to sound arrogant, but I feel like that just would have gone over the heads of every single person in 1932. I
Yeah.
With some exceptions, I'm sure. So I mean, what are your all's thoughts about the fact that he is subverting tropes before they even existed? Or is that like a stretch?
You could just say subverting expectations.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
It's not a stretch because what you're saying is accurate. He is turning the tables on the audience's expectations.
Cable's thinking.
I am. This one's I mean, it's tough to say because it does.
And Anastasia, like jump in if you have something ready, so we don't steal your thunder.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
Let's
no.
go.
You guys are doing great.
Oh.
I always worry we're not going to have enough to chat about, but look at us go.
We're like 50 minutes in already, and this is the second question. So
We're gonna have to do a part 2. No, just joking. It's okay.
Right.
no, because we have a special movie planned next, but we mentioned it, but we'll mention it again at the end of the show. So
Oh man.
We have to
Yeah.
remind everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what were your thoughts, Cable, that you were forming before?
It's just okay. So, was the audience? Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. How do you think Tod Browning's own history with Sideshow?
No, I jumped around in the question. Sorry.
Okay, so you jumped to the one about
Number 4.
number 4. About,
Fourth bullet point, I think.
Was the audience ready for Browning to subvert
Yeah.
tropes.
Mm-hmm.
So let's think about this in that 1932, we're coming out of the Depression, the Great Depression.
Yeah. I mean, it's still going for the average person. We're in the New Deal is just now really getting off its feet.
Sure.
Yeah.
We haven't. Then that becomes even more interesting because in order for us to get out of the Great Depression, there is a lot of pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. You have to, it's everyone for themselves. No one is working collaboratively or collectively to come together, right?
Well,
and then this shows what happens when you have a collective of people who work together, who are working for the good of all, not the good of some or one.
Yeah, I feel like if this came out in the 50s, McCarthy would have lost his shit. This would have felt like one giant communist plot, the entire thing.
But in this is an antithesis to what people are being told of how to get out of the Depression. You just have to work harder. You have to go get that job. It's like, or you could all take care of one another because this is happening to all of us. And maybe if we learn to take care of ourselves and come up with support networks, we don't have to rely on someone to fix this for us. Huh.
Right.
I don't know. Now I have lots of thoughts. Interesting. Like, yeah, to me, there was nothing to going back to the comment I made at the beginning. This was just a drama right up until the wedding scene.
Mm-hmm.
And the one of us was not the part that made it a horror movie. The part that made it a horror movie is the second she refused the glass. As soon as she refused the glass, threw the liquid back on everyone and started yelling freaks. I'm like, there's the monster, and this has just become a horror movie.
Mm.
And now they have to rally together to stop the monster. Not that, oh, this is going to become a horrific, they're going to do something. I love the fact that we never see what happens to her. We don't, the biggest amount of violence that we see is a knife thrown into Hercules, and that is it.
Um, I learned that in that scene where they throw that dagger at him,
Mhm.
Hercules, out in the mud and the rain, that's one of the sections that got cut. They castrate him, and then later, he is shown with his castrata voice. It's his falsetto because he has been castrated. But that's one of the things that they cut because it was just a bridge too far, I guess.
That makes sense. I think because they omitted a scene where they actually, where the freaks of the sideshow commit violence,
Mhm.
that keeps them in that that keeps that movie, and their role in the movie is like, no, they're the heroes.
Yeah.
They took care of one of their own.
That actually kind of leads into it.
Is it
that
that you think that by cutting the movie down against Browning's wishes, it actually keeps those characters in a what's the word? Uh,
It doesn't vilify them.
right. Oh my God, what is the word? Sympathetic. It keeps them in a sympathetic light.
Right. Yes. I do think that.
Although I wonder if Brown's if we'd have seen his original cut, if it would have made them even more obviously sympathetic.
Maybe.
Because that does lead into the, because I am jumping, the last question I bought is that iconic one of us scene is meant to elicit horror from the audience. But there are some modern interpretations that it's actually a more triumph of the marginalized people, not a horrific moment meant to terrify the viewer.
Yeah.
How is it a triumph?
I don't know. That's why it's a question. I'm just going off. These weren't just solely my question ideas. This is me reading other scholarly stuff.
I see. I see.
I mean, I don't know if like quote unquote triumph, because that was just a celebration of a wedding. In my opinion, it was kind of a, having her join the fold, join the family now that she's married into the sideshow. But going back a little bit of like just seeing that moment when she realizes what's happening, and you can just see her like unsteadily kind of looking and realizing, that they want to try to accept her. And I totally agree that that's when it turns horrific, and it's not everybody there, it's her, like her rejection of family, which is so insane and like heartbreaking, and then her to like belittle everyone there and scold them and throw them out,
Mhm.
It was real. That was hard to watch.
And then forcing her new husband to ride around on her back, like it's just that's pretty fucking dehumanizing.
Well, that was a little moment that they took from the original story. And I ironically, um who was it? So Tod Browning worked with the actor who plays Hans, Harry, was it Earls? Um, but so he worked with him in his earlier film, what was it? The
The
Unholy
unknown.
Three.
Oh yes.
Well, the
Yeah,
Unholy Three,
the
which I
Unholy
actually
Three.
quite like.
I love the Unholy. I mean, I'm wearing a shirt of.
Yeah,
I was like trying to like find a Tod Browning reference shirt, and I have one. But so he brought the story to Tod Browning, and then the studio kind of kept on rewriting it and changing the focal point to different parts because it was supposed to be Hans, kind of. There was a moment where was it Olga, where she, in the original story, where she makes fun of him and saying that she's gonna pick him up and carry him around like a baby or something like that. And
Carry him on her back from one end of France to the other.
Yeah, okay, so you're
Because
aware.
in the book,
Yeah.
the book is French.
Yeah, and so there's a moment where he has her doing that day to day, and that's how it kind of ends. And so that's kind of a fun, like, little Easter egg back to that, that moment of her, carrying him.
So
That if
it's that moment is essentially the basis for the whole movie. Once they've boiled out everything else. But what I actually prefer the ending of this movie, in which Hans, in the book, this Hans character really does hold her to this joke of a promise, and makes her carry him up and down France, until she's begging for mercy. That turns him into kind of the bad guy. So now he's a rich little person bad guy. But with the way things turn out in Freaks, Hans's hands are clean. And in the end, I'd never really picked up on exactly this. Like, so at the end of the movie, Hans is sad about everything that happened, and I guess I always just sort of thought he was like ashamed of himself for like falling prey to such a horrible woman, and then turning his back on his actual fiance. But I realized she's saying like, you tried to stop them, or something along those lines. And I realized, oh, he's upset because he didn't necessarily want Cleopatra to die, or for other people to be hurt. He just wanted to get away from her because she's poisoning him. But
Literally.
but he couldn't
Yes.
control the rest of the circus folk to not attack and destroy these two people who, I think, objectively deserved what they got.
Yeah, oh, completely. I mean, interesting. I don't know. Maybe I need to re-listen to the last like few seconds, but I mean, there's a moment where he's like, "Yeah, do it tonight. Like, get him." So I don't know. I feel like he was telling them, like, "Yeah, time to get rid of them."
Yes, for
Right? Like,
sure,
did you
for
guys
sure.
see that? I mean,
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
version,
No, for
there's
sure that
definitely that
happens.
scene.
Yeah, he even goes like this, and he's like, "Ha ha," and he's mocking the things that she's been saying that he knows are a lie. Because like, "Oh, my Hans, I'm trying to take care of you," and, and he's laughing because he knows that that's a lie, and she's gonna get hers. But it's that very last scene where, oh my God, what is her name? The fiance.
Frida?
Yes, thank you, Frida. Frida is comforting him, and he says like, you tried to stop them, or you didn't want anyone to be hurt, or something like that. But that's the takeaway. Um, and just generally speaking, I like it better because it was a communal revenge on a bad person, and Hans, who is essentially the victim in all of this, his hands stay clean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like the family helping him out. I mean, one of the things is like, offend one of them, offend everyone, like you don't want to get on the bad side, which, like they're a tight knit group. And you kind of have to be when you're touring around. I mean, like anybody who's been in theater and stuff, you end up bonding so closely with with fellow performers,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, absolutely.
chosen family.
Yeah, and I think you almost become more defensive of that than maybe the family you're born into at times, because this is a family you've actively sought out.
Yep.
It's kind of like that. Again, we're going back to it's that cliche of like the hero that won't kill, but knows that the bad guy's got it coming, and like leaves him in the middle of the village who's been oppressed and says, I'm going to walk away now. What happens, happens kind of thing.
It's the, I'm not going to kill you, but I'm not going to help you either.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are getting close to time.
Yeah.
I had one thing that I wanted to talk about.
Please.
That it just really like stuck in my head. And I wanted to hear y'all's thoughts about this. There's a moment that it's a scene between Venus and Frozzo, and I think he's been giving her advice. It's before they're like officially together or becoming together, but they're, they've been spending time together. And he's saying he's giving her some advice, and then he's about to leave, and he says, "Oh, you're not half bad, or you're a decent guy." Turns out, and he says, "You should have caught me before my operation."
Yeah, I did
Yeah.
wonder what that meant. The only thing I could think of was that he's already had a vasectomy. Meaning the only good thing to do to get together is to make babies. But I don't know.
That's I'm not saying that that's wrong, but like that's a huge leap from like they're not dating yet to sorry, I can't make you babies.
Such a dark. I had to Google just really quickly. When did they start doing vasectomies? That was 1823. So okay, KB. And in head, I'm like, are they doing them yet? Because I'm just assuming that,
Science.
yeah.
Well, and the way he says it, it almost seems like maybe it's like a punchline to a
Well,
joke.
I mean, Browning was facing a lot of censorship and there was constant rewrites happening and undermining and everything about his script, and things were they had to be approved, and there were characters that were thrown in just for like comedic relief and like double meaning jokes and things like that. And so I mean, I don't know if a lot of these jokes were like fully thought through. I don't know.
Sure.
So it's hard to say what that full meaning was.
Right. Yeah, you're right. There could have been a time where it made more sense, but it's been gone through so many rewrites.
Right.
Like I worked on a film that literally had different pages every single fucking day.
Mhm.
It was such a nightmare. So maybe this is one of those similar moments.
Yeah, maybe it was like a very demure moment. You know what I mean? Like that, I don't know. Hopefully it lives on.
I'm gonna rewatch though. I didn't catch that, so I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yeah, it just kind of feels like maybe like an old-timey joke that used to be popular, and so like at the time everyone would have known what that meant. But yeah, you're right. There were so many cuts and edits that it could have been something that did get explained, but that part got cut out, and so and nobody in production cared enough about continuity to
No.
reshoot that scene, or
Sure.
like
I mean,
there were no script editors back then.
yeah, well, also it's like we know that Tod Browning had such like an explosive like reaction to talkies. He didn't like them, and so he was constantly fighting with that new medium within cinema, so I don't know if he ever got control over that aspect, which was like relatively new back then for him, because like with the Unholy Three, he did the original silent film, and then a couple years later they did a remake, and that was a talkie. So
that's
like
right.
in comparison, there's not much time within when like Freaks came out, and then Freaks his it pretty much permanently damaged his career, and then he only had
Yeah.
a few other films, and then he kind of like went into self-induced retirement because also like people weren't hiring, and it bombed so much at the box office. It was also rejected, and people actively hated it. But it's
Yeah, he went into a real deep depression and became kind of. I think he did maybe one more movie after this.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I mean, like I said before, it was banned for 30 years in Great Britain. I mean, that's kind of a heavy thing to do.
Yeah.
But also like some like fun little tiny short facts, like when his wife unfortunately passed away, the press misprinted it, and so people thought that he passed away. And so for a long time, people didn't realize that he was still alive. And so ironically, the year that he passed away for real in 1962, I believe, the Venice Film Festival showed Freaks at the festival, and he got a whole second wind, but most likely he wasn't aware of it. So he just
Yeah.
kind of like passed away, from throat cancer, not aware that there was this whole new resurgence and
Oh,
support, and that
jeez.
he was like a cult kind of like icon, which
And
is so
that's about
sad to
when
think.
and that's about would lead into when we start seeing the counterculture movement, especially in the US, really attaching to that film and a lot of Todd Browning's works
Yeah,
kind of
a
picked up.
re-understanding of, because he was so hated. It's so sad. I mean, that's with London After Midnight, the film was so hated. All of these things, these like macabre storylines that he, and like quote unquote horror, people didn't really love at that point. And you would think that they would, but
Mhm.
they actively hated his films. Which is so
Well,
sad, because
yeah, it is sad.
in
I mean, it kind
certain
of makes
ways,
sense.
I think he's a genius. I mean, I don't like him personally, but I do like appreciate his art.
Oh, was he kind of a shit apple in real life?
Well, I was gonna go on to say that if you enjoy Todd Browning's films, and it this is a really great bio um book, and it also covers like he worked with was it Irving Thalberg a lot. It's kind of almost like a bio on him.
Hmm.
Obviously, Lon Chaney Sr. There's so much in here, and this is on Audible as well. And then um, they're doing a reprint. Right now, it's out of print, but in February there'll be like a reprint that'll be
Oh,
available. But
cool.
it's so interesting if you want to learn more about his background and everything. Because he had a lot going on. Not all good.
Right. Yeah.
Not all good.
Yeah, I'm putting
Hmm.
that on my
I'm gonna check
book
that out.
list.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. And kind of
Cool.
speaks to the time period, and also him as a person, his background, and kind of like why he wanted to show these stories, because he was like kind of writing from like a real life perspective, which I think is important to note for his filmography. And it's interesting also because technically, I know we're going over time, but
That's
technically
okay.
he never gave a retrospective on his film Freaks, and or really on any of his films. So it's kind of like it's important to know his history to kind of get an idea of like his choices, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
could. Yeah. Yeah, and we got to end it here, but really quick. One thing is interesting. I did discover also the one person who's attempted or references him a lot and almost does like a retrospective on his work is Rob Zombie. Um, he
Hmm.
100% credits Todd Browning for why he doesn't like to cast movie stars in his films. Is was inspired by a lot of Todd Browning's work.
Hmm.
For better or worse, I have many thoughts of Rob Zombie as a filmmaker. I love his music, love his visuals. I wish he would work off scripts he didn't write, but that's
Well, I guess everybody has a talent.
sorry, I don't want and I love him. I'm still bummed I've never seen him live in concert. I want to so badly. Um so
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah. Well, thank you. This was super fun diving into Freaks. And then in a few more weeks, I believe on October 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
No, we'll be in November. You're
Yeah,
once a month.
I was gonna say,
Sorry.
I mean, I'll
That's the
come
next
back if
show.
you want.
Um, but I felt like well,
I have November 12th.
November 12th. We decided not to do it on election night, so we're skipping. Yeah. So November 12th, we are going to be talking about Death Becomes Her.
Mhm.
I'm
A
super pumped for
favorite.
that.
So excited. So excited.
Awesome.
I actually just rewatched it I don't know, a couple weeks ago. I think it was right after we talked about it, but
Mhm.
then it was being promoted. So I was like, I'm just gonna go ahead and watch it now. I mean, I'll watch it again,
Right.
but
I feel like it screens a lot in Portland too.
mhm.
It usually finds itself in a lot of queer horror like festivals where they'll play a classic also. That's a big one in the queer community, a really big one.
Interesting.
Yeah, which I'm
Uh,
sure we'll touch on. So
I also hope everyone gets a chance to watch The Substance before we talk about Death Becomes Her, because I've read that there are some parallels.
really,
Mhm.
okay. I wanted to
Hmm.
see The Substance to begin with, but now I have an extra incentive.
Yep.
I haven't seen it, but I got that impression.
Mm-hmm.
Just,
Yeah, I haven't seen it either, but I wanted to, and then it all started tying together with our show. So, yay!
that makes sense.
Awesome. Well, yeah. Well, with that, Anastasia, thanks for joining us, and we're going to sign off. So, with that, I am Aron Duran.
I am covered in cat hair.
And I am Cable Hashitani.
And I'm Anastasia Elfman.
Right.
Thanks, everybody. We'll be back in 2 weeks, but Anastasia, we will see you in 4-ish weeks, and I hope you have a fantastic Halloween. I'm sure it's kind of always Halloween, but now just go for it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Good night, everyone.
Oh my God, we did it, guys.
I know,
We did.
Hold on, I gotta end the live stream.